Hello, welcome to Stockholm. And this session that is hosted by the Swedish Energy Agency and Almi Invest together. And my name is Martin Svensson. I'm working at the Swedish Energy Agency. And the next 45 minutes we will talk about a very interesting topic about the challenge how public support can help out in investments and capitalization of companies in an early stage that will help us with the energy transition, and also to accelerate how we reach the net zero target and how we make this in investments. And with me today, I have some very distinguished guests and colleagues. I have my colleague Dag from the Swedish Energy Agency that will tell us more about the history, how we started the Almi Invest GreenTech Fund. We have Boris Gyllenham from Almi Invest GreenTech that will tell us more about how the fund has worked these years and what will happen in the future. And we also have a very interesting, exciting examples of a company that has grown through the fund's investment and is now on a very interesting journey into the waves and the oceans of the future, Patrick. But let's start, and I hand over to my colleague Dag, who will tell us more about how we from the Swedish Energy Agency has worked with these support and how we support energy innovations today. So please, Dag.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you. So my name is Dag Angvall. I work at the Swedish Energy Agency, and we support energy and innovations. We are a government agency, and we meet challenges in society, and we contribute to the economic growth. It's all based on political goals and policy. So how do we do this? In research and development, we financially support innovative development projects. Key assessment criteria that we use are the transformation of the energy system, degree of innovation and scalability, the potential effects in society. An overview of our programs. At the bottom, you can see the programs that are thematic and aimed more at research, applied research, and even stages of innovation. In the middle, the programs more suited for startups and scale-ups. We have funding for the Swedish innovation system, for example, energy-related issues at incubators that we fund. And we have international entry programs as well. If we have a look at the calls that are presented in the middle, the concept development, verify with the first customer, and pilot and demonstration. Here's a picture of those. The first concept up to 500,000 SEK, 100% funding rate is possible. Second stage up, verified the innovation with the first customer up to 3 million SEK and 35% funding rate possible. And pilot and demonstrations, there we see a typical funding rate of 25% and a minimum size of a project of 7 million SEK. If you're interested in these calls, please have a look at our website. You find more information there. Now back to the Almi GreenTech Fund and a background. Let's go back 12 years. What we saw back 12 years back is from a technology perspective and even an investor perspective, some barriers. And what we saw, and if we can highlight some of them, was the existing infrastructure and what may cause and create lock-in effects. We also saw the need of large-scale demonstrations, time to market issues for the technology to go to a commercial market, and market demand based on policy. So what we saw here are barriers to invest for the investors. We also looked at the capital intensity of the project and related that to technology risk. If we look in the upper left corner, we have, for example, wind farms, more capital intense, less technology risk, compared to down to the right, fuel cells, where we see less capital intense projects with higher technology risks. Looking at the capital market, back in 2011, we saw quite a drop in the amount of invested capital in the clean technology sector. And we assessed this to be due to the barriers that I described and also the financial crisis back in 2008. Two things that we noticed in the market was that many of the funds at the time were focused on multi-sector. Fewer of them were focused on one sector as energy and clean technologies. And we also noticed that in Sweden, before 2008, we had quite a few venture capital investors. But with the financial crisis, some of them stopped investing. And those who were still in the market, some of them were able to attract more capital. And with more capital, they tended to go to later stages. And this left a space, a void in the early stages of investment. Pre-seed, seed, early A rounds, it was a lack of capital. Based on this, we saw public support needs. We saw the increased access to capital, reduced financial risks for investors, reduced market and policy risks, reduced experience risk for investors when assessing the technologies, and investable and bankable projects. Those needs we related to the policy instruments that we have as an agency. And what we're looking at here today, we looked at the increased access to capital and availability for venture capital in the market, information to reduce the barriers, and also business assessments and development. And we made, based on this and other information as well, we made a recommendation to the Swedish government to introduce a green public venture capital fund. And the Swedish government decided in 2014 to introduce such a fund. The fund is operated by Almi Invest and managed by Almi Invest. It's funded by Energy Agency 25%, Almi 25%, and the European Regional Development Fund 50% together, with an aim to promote and develop technologies that can avoid and reduce greenhouse gases. So that as a background. Now back to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dag. And let's move on then. That was 2014. And 2015, we really started. Almi Invest started. And I think, Boris, you were already on this journey by then, weren't you?
Yes, I started in 2018. That's 1 year after the GreenTech fund started.
Yeah. And since then, a lot of things has happened. So
yeah.
At least tell us more about the journey from 2015 until today.
Yes, thank you. So Almi Invest is part of the Almi Group. The Almi Group consists of several parts. One is a loan facility providing corporate loans and also advice. And the third part is the venture capital. Venture capital we are working about 50 or 55 people in that area. We have 9 funds managed by Almi Invest, whereas 8 of them are regional, and the GreenTech fund that I'm going to talk about today is a national fund, so covering all of Sweden. The background of the fund was described by Dag earlier, and the purpose of the fund is to support the transition to low carbon economy, and that's also one of the bearing themes for the European Regional Development Fund, to provide capital to this fund. Originally, the fund size was 65 million euros, and over the years we have invested the major part of that capital, but we're still investing. And the criteria is we wanted to invest in about between 30 and 40 companies with this fund, and that's also sets the stage where we invest. So we invest very early stage, and the companies should have innovative technology or business models, and above all, there should be very large climate gas reduction impact possibility from the investments. As of today, we have offices in Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Lund, and we're 7 employees working in the fund. The ticket size, that is how big investments we make. For our initial investment, its normal ticket is about 500,000 euros. And during the phase of follow-on investments, we can invest up to the total of 3 million euros. 7 million euros in each company. But in each investment, we do up to 3 million euros. And that would be a Series A type investment in the end. The fund is long-term. We are investing through 2030, and we stay with our companies as long as we're needed. But eventually, we'll need to exit all our investments when the time is right for that. We invest only in Swedish companies. And we invest in the entity that contains the IP rights. And our investment focus also makes it almost necessary to go with the deep tech and hardware and research-based types of companies. That's where you see the most possibility to reduce the climate gases. We sometimes lead, and sometimes we co-invest with other investors. And normally we also take board positions and work actively with the companies after we have invested. We have a portfolio of, it says 37, that's wrong, it's only 34 companies. Sorry for that. We have divided the investments into categories to easily being able to describe what sector each company contains. So if we, for example, energy transition, there are several companies there. Epishine, for example, it's a company that develops organic solar cells. Transport and mobility, there's a company, Elon Road, that also develops electrifications for transportations on the fly. it's a bit like Scalectric. And the industry and manufacturing, we can mention Graphmatech as a company that develops a specific method to treat graphene, so it's much easier to mix it with other materials and change the properties of other materials. Material and circular economy, example of that is EcoHelix that makes biopolymers out of from residues in the paper industry. And lastly, I can mention under the agriculture and food industries, it's a company called NitroCap that has found a completely new way to produce fertilizer using only electricity, water, and air. Now, after 37 investments, we can look back to see what has happened and how well have we done in this fund. First of all, I would say that the companies are still active and also very active in raising more money. Only this year, the portfolio is raising up to 200 million euros during 2023. The financial performance this far has been good, I think. On the invested capital, we have had a 100% return, and on exits, we have had an 800% return, or 9 times the invested money. We have 2 exits, that is Renewcell and Maven Wireless, or partially exits. There are we still have some shares left. There are those companies IPO'd last year. But I think the most important measurement is the how much carbon dioxide we managed to save, or that we estimate that we're going to save with our investments. So our estimate right now is that we are going to reduce the CO2 equivalent of 48 million tons by 2030, and that happens to be the same amount that Sweden emits each year. And by 2040, we think and hope that that will increase to 300 million tons. The fund has also got some recognition from international evaluators. There's Climate 50 as an annually published list of the top 50 investors in climate tech. Where this is from 2020, we ended on 4th place in Europe in early stage, and 10th place globally, which we're very happy about. So why does a fund has to have a value proposition? Well, we are not alone as investors, and actually the companies that we invest in choose who is going to invest. And if we can't provide something for them that makes them stronger, somebody else might do that. So what do we provide? Well, for companies that work with inventions that improves the climate, they also want to be have an owners that works at the same direction and also have the same focus and end goal. and from the beginning we didn't have the track record, but now we also have a track record that makes it easier for us to attract the really good companies that have the greatest possibilities to to move the needle concerning the climate. Also, our portfolio, we can also share experience between the different companies in our portfolio and attain a very good domain competence, since we're quite narrow in our sector focus. We also can go deeper into the investments than many other investors do. And lastly, we don't invest ourselves in the companies, and we need to have co-investors that take the investments further and also invest together with us. And our investor network is quite wide, and we have very many other investors, both early stage and later stage, that we can bring to the table when we invest in our companies. So here are some examples of co-investors that we have had over the years, and also the different areas, if they are Swedish, Nordic, or if they are our international investors. Our mandate is to invest only together with other investors, so this is a necessity for us. But also, when we co-invest with others, our capital will last longer, because others will provide capital to the companies, and also the companies will get more funds. And very important also is that other investors bring also other values than capital. They bring knowledge and networks to the companies. So I'll just briefly show you a couple of cases that we invested in. First of all, Renewcell. It's a company, one of the companies that has made IPO. We invested in Renewcell 2019. They have invented a process for chemical recycling of cellulose, and that basically makes it possible to take old clothes and make new clothes out of them. It hasn't been possible before, and most clothes end up in landfills. So it's our belief that the fashion industry is really needing more companies and solutions like Renewcell is providing. So the second company, Core Power Ocean. We invested in Core Power Ocean in 2018, and this company is developing wave energy systems that can harvest the energy from the waves. And if we look at our seas, that's the largest untapped source of energy on Earth that is still waiting to be exploited. And it's an extremely large potential, and it's not easy. It's has been a lot of attempts doing this over the years, and I think that Patrick here will explain why just Core Power will be the company that solves this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris. And then, as you said, we move over to Core Power, which is one of these companies that is, I noticed you're a long-term patient venture capitalist, Boris. See if Core Power agrees that this is a patient venture capitalist. And please tell us more about your story. Patrick.
Thanks a lot. So great to be here today. So I will take the chance to speak about Core Power, what we do, and of course, mostly about the journey, how we have gotten to where we are today, where we're going, and a little bit more about how we've been able to fund our journey. So in Core Power, we are on a mission to power the planet with clean electricity from ocean waves. And we are an supplier of turnkey equipment. So we deliver the kit that makes it possible for our customers to extract clean electricity from ocean waves. And we've been around since 2012, and we've gone on a very steady, structured, step-by-step approach, solving the key challenges of ocean energy and getting a lot of proof for our reliableness and competitiveness in the market. And I think that's built a lot of trust in the sector. And today we're enjoying support from several of the big utilities working across Europe. We have raised a bit more than 65 million euros of funding to date. And that has included wide support from public funding sources across Europe, including our very first ones from the Swedish Energy Agency here, from InnoEnergy, a European initiative for green startups, from the European Commission, ICEP Global, which is Portuguese money, and then Scottish money from Wave Energy Scotland. So we've really gone wide across Europe over the years to fund our journey. The private investors that have then come in are SEB GreenTech and GreenTech, today called Core Spring New Technology, and also then supported by the co-investment by Almi GreenTech. And then over the years, more family offices, private investors, and some New York-based funds who've joined our rounds over the years. But in Core Power, we are on a mission here to power the planet, as I said, and we are 75 stubborn minds that over the last decade have gone at solving wave energy. Is really a team from across the world, 14 different nationalities at our headquarters here in Stockholm, in Portugal, in Norway, in Scotland, where we have our operations today. The key challenge that we have addressed is to make wave energy devices that can survive the biggest storm at the same time generate a large amount of energy compared to their size and their cost. And the challenge with wave energy historically has been that many devices have either broken in storms or they've just become way too large, heavy, and thereby the economics hasn't worked. And that is a picture that we have drastically changed by introducing important innovations over the last decade. So today, when we have introduced our first commercial scale machine, the Core Power C4, we've taken each individual absorber, each buoy, to 300 kilowatt rating. It's a 9-meter diameter machine, and with that you can extract somewhere 40 to 60% capacity factor when you run them in the ocean. We do deliver this as core pack clusters, so not individual machines like you're seeing here, but clusters of hundreds to thousands of devices that absorb the energy. And when doing so, it can become very, very competitive. The physics and the performance behind this and the survivability, we've been proven in a 5-stage product verification process since we started in 2012. And of course, we started small scale, and we had the experience from running deep tech companies in other sectors. I've been in the semiconductor field before this, and we knew from day one that this is going to take something like 10 to 15 years. It's going to take certainly more than 100 million euros to take this to market and start shipping in volume to our customers. So the only way to track the best capital and the available capital is to do this in a structured approach where we show proof in small scale, and then we go more proof and more customer traction, and then we can take the funding all the way. And that's what we've essentially done. So the early days, we started with very small scale benchtop prototypes in the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. We did tank testing across different tanks where you have simulated waves across Europe, in France, in Portugal, and in the UK. And over the stages, we've then really nailed the performance, shown how these devices can survive the biggest storms. In our stage 3 demonstrator, we installed a machine in the Orkney Islands up in Scotland, and we've proved there how it can take the Scottish storms and how we can produce really on the target. And based on that, we actually took these 3 first stages using exclusively non-VC funding. So it was through the Swedish Energy Agency, through the EU Commission, and importantly InnoEnergy, that we were able to take stage 1, 2, and 3. So that meant from 2012 to 2018 without inviting VCs into the company. And then by 2018, we had come quite far. We had customer traction, we had proof on a reasonably big scale. And then we invited Almi GreenTech and Midrock to join us on the private side of investors. And since then, we've been scaling up. So today, we're delivering our first commercial scale machine, the C4. And the next stage here, we're doing array scale demonstration, and we're taking our technology to type certification. And by that, we're raising about 50 million euros that we're going to be closing this year. And now we are attracting more, if you say, industrial capital, strategic investors, and impact funds from around the world to take us all the way to start shipping in volume. But I'll show you a little bit of how it looks like and what we do. Our full-scale demonstrator, the Highway 5, we do in Portugal at a site called Agusadora. So this is just north of Porto. And we built out our base for assembly and maintenance in a town called Viana do Castelo, just north of that. And from here, we're exporting power into the Portuguese grid through a substation that you can see here on the picture. And we've been working a lot over the last 3-4 years on really industrializing wave energy. So we've gone from a product design company to an industrial manufacturing company. And we've shown how wave energy is very scalable, how you can roll it out using existing local port facilities. It can be assembled in existing facilities. It can be installed using local small vessels, etc. So a quite different rollout approach compared to large wind turbines. And in this facility in Viana do Castelo, we've also demonstrated our mobile factory technology for producing the composite hulls. So we have developed a fully automated additive technology where we use local manufacturing for these big 9-meter diameter composite hulls. So delivering big farms to our customers, we move these mobile factory cells to the customer site, produce the amount of buoy hulls needed on that project, and then we move them over to the next customer site. So in that, it becomes very scalable. We cut out the CO2 and the cost of transportation. And in Sweden, we built out our way to produce the power takeoffs, the inside of these devices. So it's large-scale industrial manufacturing that we're doing. And we've also invested in the world's largest dry test facility, where we're using simulated wave loading to tune and stabilize the machines, really make them stable before we bring them into the ocean. And the C4 machine, which is now in the ocean in Portugal, it spent 1 year in dry testing with simulated wave loading here in our facility in Västberga in southern Stockholm, where you see the videos from here. So that's an important thing. And then we've shown how you can transport them, integrate them with the composite hulls, and how you can quickly install them into the ocean. So the full steps for our customers for how to build large 100 megawatts to gigawatt scale farms. And this is what a complete machine looks like in commercial scale. And as I mentioned, we're offering this technology as core pack clusters. These are then clusters of 10 to 20 megawatts per unit, where we use about 25 buoys per core pack. And these core packs can then be laid out side by side to form large utility scale farms. And that can be either standalone wave farms, or it can be hybrid with wind, as you see in this picture here. And it's a quite interesting approach, we think, to deliver at scale. It's a very modular approach. Each device is quite small. The 9-meter diameter device you see down to the right compared to a 10 megawatt wind turbine. So each unit is very small, but what makes it very powerful is that we put a lot of them in high density clusters. So that is a more modular approach, similar to, if you say, battery manufacturing, where you use a lot of small cells, or PV, where you have a lot of small PV cells to build up large ones. And we believe that is going to accelerate the adoption to bring economies of scale in a very early way. And the opportunity that we're getting at is a very large one. As Bo was mentioned, one of the largest untapped sources of clean energy out there, somewhere between 1 and 2 gigatons of annual CO2 avoidance is possible to address here. But what we think makes wave energy really valuable and interesting is the consistent production profiles. As waves, and especially swells, are built up over the large oceans over multiple days from different weather systems. Let's take a place in Portugal, for instance. There you have swells coming into the coast, that have been built by winds from the US, from Canada, from Greenland. And when they come into the coast, there's been an amazing power concentration and smoothing process working for us. So the profile that comes in is very steady. So if you look at a typical weekly profile of wind and PV, this is from 1 week in California, 2018, you see a typical variability. We see the daily pattern of the sun, and we see a more chaotic variation of the wind. If you take the wave profile of that same week, it's this steady, and that's a very general week. This is how wave energy generally looks like. So when you add wave to the mix of wind and solar, you can add stability to the clean energy mix. So we can come to 24/7 clean electricity, and by that, wave energy can take on this role that fossil sources is playing today, filling the gaps and making the electricity system stable while running at 100% renewables. So by that, we should see the oceans as huge energy storage units. It's some of the biggest batteries on Earth that we have working for us to smoothen the power flows. And when we add them into the mix, we can then strongly accelerate the transition to 24/7 renewables. And that, to me, is one of the biggest challenges that the world is at in order to fully abate and avoid all the fossil which is still used in the world today. So that's the journey we're at, and good to be here.
Thank you, Patrick. Very exciting and very interesting and beautiful pictures as well of the deep sea and deep tech technology, I would say, isn't it? It's I think you truly represent this what we call deep tech. You talked about the long times for development, the different stages, and perhaps I can just sort of ask you, did you imagine that when you, I don't know when you joined, but if somebody was in the same situation today as you were in 2012, what would you tell them to think about? Is it very much technology focus, and how do you see these different stages that your company gone through?
Of course, that depends on what kind of sector and technology it is, but in our case, it's a very much of a product race. Wave energy still is and has been all the time about making stuff that works and that is reliable and competitive. So for us, that has been the biggest challenge. It's the physics, it's the hydrodynamics of the ocean that we are working with. But my advice to deep tech founders, I started this company together with our inventor Stig Lundbeck back in 2012, would be to really have a realistic view of how long time you really need to bring it all the way to market and the kind of capital that will require. We had done previous journeys in other sectors before and kind of knew that it would take this long time. Then it always takes a little bit longer, and it takes a little bit more capital than what you think anyhow. So, yeah.
Yeah, because that moves on to, of course, the question about capital, which we're really talking about today, and the role of different types of capital. And as you mentioned, Patrick, you started with avoiding venture capital for the first stages. You were finding capital from government agencies like us, wait for the early inventions and innovations. And then we move into to public capital and venture capital, and the role of Almi and the initiative of Swedish Energy Agency. And as I sort of, Dag, you also described the long journey, the startup process, the financial crisis, and then eventually we got to 2014. And how do you see today, how has it changed the capital market? Would you say, should we do the same thing today, or should we take differently? We have a different type of financial crisis today, and would something similar, should we work similarly? And do you have any thoughts about now, 10 years later? What should we do in the future?
For the stages, I do think that the public has a role to fill, especially when we have the time limits that we have in relation to issues as the climate change. If we look at the barriers that I described before, I think that we can see same kind of barriers, but they are, I think that some of them are more addressed by the public. For example, the need of large-scale demonstrations, where, if we take the Swedish Energy Agency support, pilot and demonstration, the Green Industrial Leap, and from the Commission, there are huge awareness about the need of that. So I think that the public side is there, and from the owner side and investor side, it's about mitigating the risks, understanding and mitigating risks as well. So same barriers, but much more aware within the sector.
Yeah, certainly the issue is much more important today than it was 12 years ago, and we see also many more actors. Yeah, and Boris, from venture capitalists, although a very patient venture capitalist, I keep coming back to that. How do you see the changes over the years and the future role for funds like yours?
Yeah, I think that if we talk about the climate discussion overall has broadened, and also I think much more people than before now realize that the climate issue also is an energy issue, very much so. And there has happened a lot when it comes to available capital for enterprises in the green tech or clean tech area. I think there's more focus on the area, and more LPs or investors that finance the VC funds also want to be part of the solution for the future. So there are much more funds available and much more capital available, at least in earlier stages. So I think the problem that we saw before has partly been solved. And what we're missing now is perhaps, I would say, it's very difficult to attract capital in the first commercial demonstration that you want to do. If you want to demonstrate 50% scale, that's okay. It might not be commercial, but when it's commercial size, it's very expensive, and I think the capital is scarce. It's very difficult. It's not, perhaps not, shouldn't be only venture capital. Perhaps it should be debt, should be guarantees and other types of financing.
No, I think that's the same. That's the situation as Core Power is right now, isn't it? When you next step to large scale, full scale implementation, and I can see how do you see the need? Is it venture capital? Is it public money? Is it other support like Boris talked about, loans or debts? Or how do you think about? Do you have a strategy for your future investments?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we've been taking this gradual steps, and it started very much with the demonstration money, the early research money from the Swedish Energy Agency, and then we've taken the early stage VCs that we worked with as yourself that are fairly patient. But now we're coming more and more to just industrial scale up. So it's different kinds of venture capitalists that are, and I'm happy to see that there is more and more larger impact funds and also strategic investors who have a big appetite to invest into hardware these days. That has really changed in the recent years. There was some while where everybody just wanted to invest in software, and that's great, and we can all measure all the CO2 out there, but unfortunately won't remove any of that CO2 unless we put new kits out there. So that is good to see. But where we are now, it's very much funding our next customer projects so that SPV specific project companies get funded, and they're big help from Swedish export credit such as EKN and SEK is very important. Giving them big mandates to do clean tech, I think, can accelerate things. And of course, also attracting larger infrastructure funds with a combination of debt and equity.
Exactly. How do you see the role for public government funding in the next stages here? Now we have had a very big focus on startups in the beginning. How would you sort of course, the government, the public funding can't match the private funding, but is there specific things to think about if you think about public funding into the next stage? Boris and
Very short. I think we need funds that move up in later stages that we are acting. And also, I think a narrow focus on the types of investments, I think has been a good choice, because it's easier than to be good at evaluating the companies.
Exactly, yeah. There's a big challenge, and I think, we have only 11 seconds left, but with that, I think I would just like to thank you all, and I hope everybody who's listening and watching find it very interesting and realize the big importance of some public investment as well as other funding. So please, if you have any question, contact us or Almi, or if you want to know more about the deep oceans and the way energy from there, talk about with Patrick. So thank you very much for us.